Hello all, Darren here. Thank you for joining me, lovely to have you. This is a new series on my channel, so if you'd like to see more unexplained and strange disappearances, subscribe and stay tuned for daily uploads. Today we're exploring the strange disappearance of Annie McCarrick. Annie McCarrick was a 26-year-old American woman who was living in Sandymount, Dublin when she disappeared on Friday the 26th of March 1993. Annie was originally from Bayport in Long Island, New York, and had moved to Ireland initially in 1987 to study teaching at St. Patrick's College. Annie returned to New York during 1990 but decided to relocate to Ireland again in early 1993. The day that she disappeared started like any other. Annie called her friend Anne O'Dwyer to see if she would like to go hiking with her in the Dublin and Wicklow Mountains later that day. Unfortunately, Anne had recently injured her foot and was unable to accompany Annie. Annie's housemates had returned to their respective homes in the countryside for the weekend at this point, so she was in the apartment alone. It's believed she knitted until around 11 a.m. An account from her housemate stated that Annie was sitting upright in her bed knitting that morning. She had purchased 2 tickets to a theatre performance as her mother was coming to visit her the following week, and Annie was very excited and happy to see her when she arrived. After 11 a.m., Annie decided to run some errands in the town. She reportedly visited her bank and then purchased groceries before heading home. She had promised to do some baking for her workplace the following day, the Café Java in Lesson Street. Annie arrived home at approximately 3 p.m. and was then seen leaving again shortly after at around 3:15 p.m. This sighting was confirmed by a plumber, Bernard Sheeran, who was working there at the time. What's surprising about this is that Annie didn't unpack any of her groceries before leaving again, which is odd as she had perishable items such as butter and milk, which were to be used in her baking. Annie was then spotted by a fast food restaurant owner walking along New Grove Avenue towards a bus stop. Annie then boarded the number 18 bus heading towards the upmarket Dublin suburb of Ranelagh. Here, she would board the number 44 bus that would bring her to the picturesque village of Enniskerry in the Dublin and Wicklow Mountains. Annie was spotted by an ex-co-worker by the name of Eimir O'Grady, who was also queuing for the 44 bus. Eimir would later tell Garda that she had called out to say hello to Annie, but that she was ignored. The woman she believed to be Annie would ascend the stairs to sit in the upper area of the bus and disappear from view. She noted this was out of character for Annie, who was normally outgoing and very friendly, but didn't think much of it. Eimir exited the bus before Annie, and this was the last confirmed sighting of her. It should be noted that the bus would have arrived in Enniskerry at around 5 in the evening, which would have been very late to start hiking in the mountains, as sunset that day would have been at around 6:15. One major detail that has baffled Garda is that absolutely nobody in the small and quaint town of Enniskerry remembers seeing anyone who matched Annie's description that day. She was a 5'8" woman with long curly hair, a recognizable tweed coat, and a distinctive American accent. Annie should have stood out like a sore thumb, but nobody saw her. A local who worked in the post office believed that she had sold stamps to a woman who she later believed was Annie, but couldn't be certain. The post office didn't have CCTV cameras, so no footage exists that could support this claim. A security guard at the popular Johnny Fox's pub came forward later on to state that he saw Annie with an unidentified male in the pub that evening. He described the man as roughly 5'9", between the ages of 24 to 28, clean-shaven, athletic build, brown hair, and square-jawed. But he had never seen the man in the pub before. Another guard, Paul O'Reilly, told Garda that he believed he had seen Annie there at 9:30 p.m. that night, in the lounge. This has been brought into question, however, as it's 5 miles from Enniskerry to Fox's, and the night that she went missing was extremely wet with torrential rain. How would she have travelled the distance there in adverse weather with little to no protection from the elements? On March 26, 2023, on the 30th anniversary of her disappearance, the Garda announced that they were upgrading the case from missing person to a murder inquiry. They are now also following a line of investigation that Annie never actually left Sandymount that day and was murdered by someone known to her in the area. This theory is supported by a few factors, such as her leaving perishables unpacked and in the grocery bags, which would suggest that she had only left very briefly and had every intention to return, perhaps to meet someone. Secondly, her co-worker had noted that the woman she thought was Annie didn't respond to her greeting, which she described as being out of character for her. Is it possible that Ymir was mistaken in her recognition of this woman and spotted someone who looked like Annie but wasn't? Finally, it is noted that it was raining heavily that evening, but Annie was not dressed appropriately for the weather conditions, and neither did she have an umbrella. She was widely considered to be an intelligent and organized young woman who was street smart and well prepared. The belief that she would get up, abandon her groceries, leave heavily underdressed for the weather, and travel to Enniskerry to then walk 5 miles to a rural pub in the dark and the rain seems fairly unfounded. According to a recent development, the Garda now suspect 2 brothers as being directly involved in her disappearance. According to an article on Dublin Live, news of the cut to the investigation team emerged months after we revealed that 2 brothers are now prime suspects for the murder of Annie. The pair are the focus of the upgraded murder investigation, sources say. One brother is suspected of stalking and assaulting student teacher Annie shortly before she vanished from South Dublin in March 1993. Both have previously been spoken to by Gardaí. Neither man has been arrested, but officers are building a case against them. Thank you, and feel free to like this video if you enjoyed it. Until tomorrow, don't forget, stay vigilant and stay safe.